Hello, I would like to welcome everyone to the South Lyon Community Schools School Board Special Meeting on Thursday, April 23rd, 2020. Mr. Abate, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Sanchow.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Dashner.
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, I think you're muted. But I do see him. He is here.
He muted himself again.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. And Mr. Schwegler.
Here.
And Mr. Tell.
Here.
Okay, there we have a quorum. Our next item is public comment. We have two public comments tonight. The first one was asked just to be read. The comment was sent in by Christine Sakuro, and she is with the South Lyon East Cougarettes, and she just wanted to speak regarding the new auxiliary gym. Our next public comment is Lisa Welch, our SLEA president. Lisa, are you there? You can unmute.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I wish I could see you all publicly. It's kind of it's a bummer. But listen, I just wanted to speak for a moment and let you know that the members of the SLEA look forward to being as active as we can in this superintendent selection process, as the decision will directly impact our students and every educator in our association. And we know that the board originally committed to a process that to date has involved hiring a firm to conduct a statewide search, and a process that was intended to actively encourage the engagement of all stakeholders. Now, while we recognize that this process will look different due to COVID-19, it is our hope that you are still committed to making sure all stakeholders have an opportunity to be actively engaged throughout. So even though we can't meet in person at this time, we believe the various stakeholder Q&As, meet and greets, surveys, those kind of things that you were considering before will still be provided and will still take place virtually. I know you know that this is a very important decision that will have a lasting impact on the success and direction of South Lyon Community Schools. And we know as educators that our voice will bring value to the process. We are hopeful there will be several amazing candidates that you're about to sift through, and that in the end, we will find a perfect fit for South Lyon Community Schools. Thanks again for letting me speak, guys.
Thank you. That was our last public comment. We haven't received any in the last few minutes. So there is another opportunity at the end of the meeting for public comment, and our public comment online system is open throughout the whole meeting. So feel free to add your comments at that point. We are also live streaming the open portion of this meeting on YouTube. If you go onto our South Lyon homepage, you can click on that and watch it as well. And just a quick note for Lisa, we will have comment cards specifically for the interview process that will be available next week. And then we also will try to do as much of the meet and greet and as many of those opportunities that we have, we will try to offer those as well. Okay, with that, we need a motion under Open Meetings Act 8.1 to go into closed session. Can I get a motion?
So moved by Dashner.
Kennedy supports.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Abate, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Unmute yourself, Dan.
There we go. Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
And Ms. Sanchow.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. We are now moving into closed session. We will come back to this open meeting at the conclusion of our closed session meeting. So board members, if you could leave this session.
Sorry. I shared all of the applicants with you in closed session, and you had a chance to ask questions and seek clarification. And so you're aware of who all of the applicants are for the position. At this point, again, we were not able to, per the Open Meetings Act, make any decisions regarding who the board determined they wanted to interview during closed session, but now is the time for that. And we have given each applicant a letter designation so that as we now engage in dialogue and the board determines who it is you wish to interview, until there's a successful motion, will still continue to maintain their confidentiality, which they're entitled to, until the board does successfully pass the motion inviting those folks in to interview, at which time we'll publicly reveal who they are. So what I'm going to ask is member by member, and we can go in whatever the order might be, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to ask that each of you simply by letter tell me who it is that you would like to, if it were all up to you, here are the 4, 5, 6 people, whatever the number might be, that you would like to see included in the interview process. We're not going to do anything more than each individual initially expressing that. I'll kind of tally that up. We'll see where we stand, and then we'll take it from there. So if that makes sense, one by one, I'm going to ask you simply by letter to say, here are the applicants that I would like to invite into interview for the superintendency.
Okay, Mr. Abate, do you want to call the roll for that?
Trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I think you just muted yourself again.
I think he's freezing.
Internet connection.
Hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Yep.
So you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you want me to call the roll for it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you just call the order of people that will speak, that will give their choices.
Okay. No. Mr. Dashner.
So I would, the candidates I'd like to interview would be candidates A as in Alpha, B as in Bravo, C, Charlie, D, Delta. And that's it.
Mr. Kennedy.
I would like to interview candidates A, Alpha, B, Bravo, C, Charlie, D, David, F, Franklin, and H, Hancock.
I'll just throw stuff in here. I would like candidates A, B, C, D, F, J.
I want to make sure I got
And
it.
Ms. Hanshop.
Can
Hold
I
on.
interrupt? Sorry. Was that was
Oh.
A, B, C, D, F, and what was the last one?
Is it? And J. J is in Jaguar.
All right. Thank you.
And Ms. Hanshop.
Okay, I would like to interview A, B, C, D, H, and J.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
Okay, I would like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Foxtrot, and Juliet.
Okay, Mr. Schregler?
I would like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Juliet.
And Mr. Tell?
I would like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, H, as in, I don't know, what's a good H? Hanshaw.
Hotel.
And J, Juliet.
Okay. So what we have is all 7 of you have expressed interest in interviewing candidates A, B, C, and D. So for right now, we don't really need to discuss those any further. Presumably, when someone makes a motion, it will include candidates A, B, C, and D, right? So now further discussion would be who, if anyone, would you like to include with that group to interview? It looks like 3 of you were interested in speaking with candidate F. 3 of you were interested in speaking with candidate H. And 5 of you had interest in speaking with candidate J. So it looks like there is a majority of the board also interested in speaking with candidate J. I don't know that we need to get into too much further dialogue about that, although we certainly could. President Hanshaw, I'll look to you for the moment for that.
I think as long as no one is opposed to interviewing Jay, I mean, we have 5 out of 7, so.
Okay, I think if we were to include Jay in the motion, when you open it for discussion, if somebody has opposition, again, we're going to be careful to frame it the right way, but we certainly could express that.
Okay.
But the others where there is interest, but it's divided, is with candidates F and H. In each case, 3 of you have interest. So as we had discussed when we talked process before, what I'd like to invite you to do, being careful to maintain these folks' confidentiality as best you can, to anybody who would like to, who supported those candidates, speak to why it is that you would like to see them included and why you would advocate that you should do so. We want to start with, why don't we start with H? That was Eric, Carrie, and Jennifer who had indicated that. Would any of you like to speak on that person's behalf? Advocate?
I can start. I just felt that the candidate had a very long history of experience in a number of leadership positions, I guess. Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
I had similar thoughts that there was a longer, more diverse experience history with candidate H.
Okay, anyone else?
I will say this, since I'm one of the people who did not vote for either of those, I had H as my 6th, if I was going to say 6th, for what that's worth.
And for what it's worth for me, I had 4 very strong, and to get to 6, my last 2, I felt positive about, but they were not in my top 2 or 3. Not just to say that I wanted to get to 6, but I felt 6 was a fair number, and I see nothing wrong with keeping them in, very well rounded, I think, on both of them, and I think certainly both qualified. If we as a board decide if we were to just call for 5 interviews, I would be okay with that.
Okay.
As a thought going forward, that's by no means leading anybody in that direction.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else anyone would like to say in reference to candidate H in support?
I can swing over to H. I primarily was looking at curriculum as a strong point, and they both have it. So I'm comfortable with H if the group would like to go that direction.
Okay. And then the other candidate who had support from 3 members of the board in that initial go round was candidate F. Would anyone like to say anything on behalf of candidate F? Why I would support that candidate going forward?
I think that candidate's overall
Oh,
experience.
if I may,
Go ahead, Tony.
can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Well, kind of.
Oh, that's all right. I just want to make sure you can hear. For me, I kind of by cutting in and out.
Cutting.
Yeah.
I felt very much the way Mr. Dashner did. I felt very strongly about the first. I wonder if I should back out and come back in to the feed.
Breaking up pretty
Yeah, we
badly.
didn't
I'm
have
thinking
any
maybe
issues.
so.
Yeah, we didn't have any issues with the closed session, but this one you're cutting out a lot.
Can the community see the text window, the chat window? Is that,
I would assume, yeah. Well, no, I don't know.
yeah,
Yes, they can. That's part of it.
okay. So Tony could type in his comments if he needed to as well.
If I may interrupt real quick, they can see it if you want them to see it. I can pull it up in the live stream.
Okay. If we need to resort to that, then we may ask you to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that better?
Much better.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I was going to say that I felt very much the way Mr. Dashner did. I felt very confident about the first 4 letters that I shared. I felt like if we needed to get this fixed, I would be comfortable speaking with the other 2, either F or H. It sounds like the board has an interest more in H. I'm comfortable that way because I felt the first 4.
Okay. So anybody else who would like to speak on behalf of candidate F as to why you think that candidate should be included? So if not, here's what I'm going to ask, and hopefully this won't confuse the issue, but can we go back around again? And again, there was unanimous support for A, B, C, and D, right? So I think it's a given at this point. They'll be included in the motion. If I simply ask the question, you've heard that dialogue now. There was some support for candidate F, some support for candidate H. 5 of you initially had supported candidate J. If I were to ask if the question on the floor now was kind of given a second go at it at this moment, beyond those first 4, is there anybody else who you would like to include? And the answer could be no, there's not. You want to stop at those 4. Or it could be, yes, I would also like to include candidate, whatever that letter is, or candidates by plural. And let's just see if things shake out a little bit differently this time. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're just speaking to, again, beyond those first 4. Is there anybody else at this point that you would like to include?
Are
We
you
want to
looking?
just same order.
Sure.
Okay, since I was first last time, I guess I would like to hear from candidates H and J.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy,
I would also like to hear from candidate J.
Mr. Abate,
Candidate, candidate J. I'd like to hear from. I'm fine with H as well. J and H.
okay, I would like to hear from H and J. Mr. Clark,
H and J.
Mr. Schwegler,
H and J.
and Ms. Ertel.
H and J.
I think that's begging for a motion.
So
Okay.
Dashner here, I'd like to make a motion that we select candidates Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Hotel, and Juliet to enter the next stage of our superintendent search.
Support by Clark.
Okay, moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Clark to interview candidates A, B, C, D, H, and J. Do we have any comments, discussions, questions? If not, Mr. Abate, will you please call the roll?
I think Mr. Abate is locked up again.
Yes, can I appoint Mr. Kennedy to stand in as the acting secretary?
Sure, I will do this in the order that you appear on my screen.
No, I'm here. Did you not?
You dropped out again.
I'm sorry, you didn't. Did you not hear me?
No.
No.
I'm sorry, you didn't hear me. I called Mrs. Ertel.
Okay,
Yes.
Maybe he should hold up signs.
I think they cut the cable on 10 Mile.
I live right down the road from him. It's not my internet.
are you there, Tony?
Can anybody hear me? I don't know. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
A little bit.
I don't know what's going on. I apologize. Do you maybe want to, Carrie, maybe you want to call the roll since having trouble?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Kennedy to call the roll for this.
Okay. We heard
Okay.
from Mr. Tell, Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Hanshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yeah.
And Mr. Abate.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so for the record, I'll go ahead and read off who these applicants are, identify them by name and their current position. So the board is inviting to interview Stephen Archibald, who is the Assistant Superintendent of HR and District Services in Livonia Public Schools. Adam Hartley, who's the Superintendent of the Fenton Area Public Schools in Fenton, Michigan. Benjamin Kirby, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services in South Lyon Community Schools. Matthew Outlaw, Superintendent of the Brandon School District in Ortonville, Michigan. Dina Rocheleau, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction in Ferndale Public Schools. And Benjamin Williams, Superintendent of the Taylor School District in Taylor, Michigan. So we will be extending an invitation to those candidates this evening and getting them on the interview schedule for interviews that begin next week, Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So, if I may,
Continue.
sure. Are there any questions at all? Anything else relative to that we need to discuss? We've got the interview field set. We've got times established for those 3 nights of interviews. I want to confirm that we've got the interview slots scheduled now for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. First interview at 6 o'clock, second interview at 7:40 each evening, correct?
Correct.
And then the intent is to come back together on Thursday, April 30th. Is that correct? To have discussion and narrow the field down to the finalists for the position?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, 6 o'clock also on the 30th?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. All right. So you have in your possession a set of interview questions and kind of the format that we follow for first round interviews that comes from the Michigan Leadership Institute. And the opening statement and questions will be asked, stated and asked by the president of the board. So President Hanshaw would automatically take the opening remarks and those 3 opening questions that you see there.
Okay.
Then there are 6 other categories that include questions. In some of those categories, there are 3 questions there. So if once we assign that category, those are the 3 questions that board member will ask. In a given category, if there's more, I'll ask the board member who's going to take that category which by number questions he or she would like to eliminate. And certainly other board members could weigh in at that point, but we'll want to get down to 3 questions in each category. All right.
Okay. Mhm.
So is there anybody that particularly would like to take district relations?
I can do that.
Okay, so Jennifer, district relations. All right, 3 questions there. Yes. Political awareness.
I can take that one.
I was going to say, Mr. Clark, I was going to request.
Okay, political awareness. And then, Randy, is there one of the 4 that you'd like to see us drop?
Let's take out number 3 since I think that's going to be up in the air.
Okay. Any objections from anybody else? All right. Leadership attributes.
I could take that one.
Okay, Mr. Abate.
Okay, and in this case, we need to drop 2.
I would be content with dropping the first one.
Okay.
If nobody has any objection.
Nope.
And then I don't know, 3 or 5. What do you guys think of those?
I
I feel like
3.
5. You had 3 to drop, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd drop.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm fine with that.
So
Okay.
Okay.
Good with that. So we'll drop 1 and 3 from that grouping. Okay. Instruction and curriculum.
Terry, it looks like you're looking at me for that.
I actually am. How can you see me?
Wow.
You're right there on my screen. So.
All right. So
I'll
What?
split it with you, Eric. Oh,
Okay.
wait, no, we got to only go down to 3 in that, right?
yeah, we do. So in
Right.
this case, why don't we look at it more affirmatively since there's 7 questions? What are the 3 you'd like to ask?
Without overthinking all 7 questions.
Okay.
I like 2, 5, and 6.
Okay.
However,
I had 2 and 5 circled myself, so that would work for me.
And I had 5 and 6, so I think he covered it pretty good.
All right.
Perfect.
those would be my top 3.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all. That was easier than I thought it was going to be.
It's a
Just
tough one.
pick 3.
Okay, finances.
As the treasurer, I was going to volunteer for that.
Okay, Craig, thank you. And staff and personnel. Who's left?
Mr. Schwegler.
I'm in.
Okay, so I will be putting this all together in the format that you see it. You'll have a separate set of interview questions with lots of room for notes for each of the 6 candidates. I'll be sending that to you via email, so you have that in hand and can print that. And again, you can print all 6, write notes directly on there, or you can print one set, I suppose, and take notes separately. But you will want to take very careful notes when you get to the 30th next week, and it'll be decision time. One thing that I really encourage you all to do at that point is to have reviewed again the application materials with a fine-tooth comb, everything that you've got in your hand, which is the application form, the cover letter, and the resume. But you'll also want to go back and reflect on your own notes. So you want to take notes as copiously as you can, because it's easy when you get to the candidates that you talk to on night 1. By the time you get to the 4th night and you've had a lot more dialogue, it's really easy to get confused or even forget to see what differentiates one candidate from another in terms of their responses to the various questions. So it's really helpful if you take great notes that you can reflect back on. And then you're also going to be giving staff and community members who are listening in the opportunity to provide feedback. That'll give you an additional data point to use that you can read through. And where it's the board decision as in terms of where you're going with this, of course, you want to know how your stakeholders feel about it as well. And so that'll be something else for you to take into account. So a lot of data there for you to carefully consider when you're looking to narrow the field from 6, presumably then down to 2 on Thursday. But for those 3 nights, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, it'll simply be going through this process, opening remarks, all the interview questions, take a slight break, go into candidate 2. We'll repeat that on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then come back together Thursday. And on Thursday, I have a process that I'll walk you through that actually is fairly similar to what we just did to identify the 6 that you want to interview. That should get us to the point where we're down to then the 2 finalists that you'd like to invite back for the following week. Okay.
Commissioner, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Saveri, are you going to, I guess retract is probably the best word for it, is the Google Drive folder you shared with us that had all the information, and then give us access with one that just has the 6 candidates we're moving forward with?
Craig, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I intended to say that. I'm not sure that I was about to remember it to do so. So thank you for asking the question. That's exactly what I intend to do. I will rescind your access to that Google Drive folder, but then separately by email, I'll send you a PDF of the application materials for the 6 candidates that you've selected to interview. And I may just go ahead and do that first. So you can start to look it over even before I get the interview questions finalized, but I'll also then by email send you those interview questions as well.
Okay, and that's going to happen fairly soon here, so we have them to look at as before we get to the interviews.
Oh yeah, I'd like to get you the applications and cover letters and resumes in your hands as quickly as possible. But then no later than Saturday, I'll have the interview questions in your hands as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great question. Thank you so much for that. I had also sent you by email kind of a list of do's and don'ts that we really don't need to, in terms of time, go over right now, but I'm just going to call your attention back to that. Have you take a look at that. If you have any questions or concerns, that's more MLI providing guidance than it is us dictating to you what you're able to do. So please take that in the spirit with which it's intended. But if we think if you follow that guidance, it'll keep you out of trouble, and it'll keep things going smoothly. So I urge you to review that. And if you have any questions once you do, you can feel free to contact me with that. So you do have a feedback form that you're going to be making available. And I just want to put that out there to you. On the feedback form, there's a place on the bottom that indicates that someone can include their name and address and identify themselves specifically by name. And or they can include their role, meaning that if they perhaps don't want to identify themselves, or even if they do, to say, I'm a teacher in the district, I'm a parent, maybe I'm both, community member. Sometimes it's good to understand what perspective the person is giving feedback from. Let me just ask, I know that, and this is, I'm speaking in generalities, but typically, especially when there's an internal candidate, and there is, staff members in particular, but it could be others too, could especially be sensitive to providing feedback and identifying themselves. That's just the nature of the beast, and I can understand why. So just know that and understand that I don't know what process you have identified to collect the feedback, but I think it'll be important that people are going to be able to provide it and remain relatively anonymous if they would like to. Okay?
Yep.
All right. And then I think I forgot to mention this, but just to reiterate the point with the interview questions, even though we've selected those 21 we would like to ask, you could be thinking about that now, but especially when I send those back to you, possibly as soon as tomorrow, no later than Saturday. If you have a strong feeling that there may be one of those that you consider to be relatively weak, and there's an important question that we really should be asking that perhaps is more specific to South Lyon, please give that feedback to President Hanshaw, and she can ultimately communicate to me if we would like to make any changes. If we do, I would just simply revise that draft that you received, and I would send you back then the updated version. Again, in as timely a fashion as possible. The goal is going to be to get anything that you need to have in your hands by Saturday if possible, and certainly no later than Sunday. You shouldn't be getting anything new the day of the interviews if we can help it.
Okay.
So I think I'm tapped out, believe it or not.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Mr. Saveri?
Nope.
I just want to say that so far it's been a great process, and yeah, I'm looking forward to our interviews. Mr. Kennedy, did you?
Actually, I have one question. There was one, I can't remember what paperwork it came over on, where we have a timing issue. Like there's someone that's kind of keeping track of time throughout the interview. Is that going to be one of the board members? Is that you, John, or how does that kind of get so that we're not, only gone through 2 questions in an hour and a half?
So one of the things you'll see in the do's and don'ts for board members is if you ask a question, and if you're getting a run-on answer where you feel like the candidate has answered the question but is still going on and maybe belaboring the point, and that could jeopardize the timing of things, there's some guidance in there as to how you can kind of politely interject and get the candidate to move things along. So just know that that's the case. I asked the board president to just keep one eye on the time and be prepared to interject with the candidate. And typically the nice way to do it is, let's say with 15 to 20 minutes left, be able to say something like, and this is only if you feel like you might be cutting it close, to be able to say something like, we have 20 minutes to go and we still have 10 questions. So we're really going to need to kind of pick up the pace, and you're going to need to, answer accordingly, because we still want you to have time at the end to ask questions and make final comments. I'm also, though, going to be watching the time. And if the board president is caught up in what's going on, I'm not going to be shy about interjecting if need be. It's because the rule of thumb is that you can stop short of 90 minutes, and quite often we do, but you can't exceed 90. So worst case scenario, a candidate's going to give answers that go on for long enough that we reach the end of the evening and there's no longer time for the candidate to ask questions or make any final comments. Just know that we have to stay hard and fast to that. We have to stay to that 90 minutes to be fair. So all the more reason we want to remind them or interject and let them know if we're kind of flirting with that and to pick up the pace as we move on. Great
Okay.
question.
Mr. Kennedy?
Oh, I just wanted to thank John for making one of the biggest decisions that's very daunting, not very horrible. I've been on other interview committees for assistant superintendents and teachers and principals, and not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I appreciate the direction and the knowing that we have a road and a plan. Just tell us what to do. We think about it and do it. It's much a relief.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's very
I
smooth.
also appreciate that you also summarized what we had actually said we were looking for. So we have that in front of us as well, so we don't lose track of what we came up with along with the community of what we're looking for. So
Right.
Definitely thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, if we don't have any more discussion on this, we do have a second opportunity for public comment. I'm not seeing any currently. Guess we can wait a second or two. But I don't see any. The live feed is about 20 seconds behind our actual. So I just want to make sure they have enough time. Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, good. The delay is shorter now, so that's good as well. But I do not see any additional public comment. So with that, I will, if anyone, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Dashner.
Support by Clark.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Clark. Any questions or comments? If not, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, I vote yes. Ms. Hanshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ertel.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Night.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Have a good
night.
night, all.
Thank you, Mr. Russell and Mr. Cox.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
pleasure.